They built the pyramids, stone by stone, block by block, one of the greatest structures in human history, created by human hands. But here's the question no one asks. What happened to the people who built them? Because after the pyramids were completed, those workers seemed to disappear. The pyramids of Egypt have stood for thousands of years, massive, perfect, unimaginable. We study how they were built. We argue about tools, techniques, engineering. But we rarely ask the most important question, not how they were built, but who built them, and more importantly, what happened after. Because history records kings, pharaohs, monuments. But the workers, they fade into silence, and that silence is where the mystery begins. To build something like the pyramids required more than vision. It required people, thousands of them, workers, laborers, skilled craftsmen, engineers of their time. These were not random individuals. They were organized, trained, controlled. Evidence suggests they lived in structured communities, worked in teams, followed strict systems. And this is where things start to get interesting, because these workers were not slaves in chains, at least not in the way many people imagine. They were part of a system, a workforce dedicated to a single purpose, building something that would outlive them all. But here's what doesn't add up. If these workers were so essential, so organized, so central to one of history's greatest achievements, why do we know so little about them? Why are their stories not told? Why do their names not survive? And that's where the mystery begins to grow. Because when something this important leaves so little trace, it raises questions. Questions that don't have easy answers. After the pyramids were completed, the need for such a massive workforce ended. And this is where things become unclear, because we would expect records, transitions, evidence of what happened next. But instead, there is silence. And this silence is strange, because a workforce of this size does not simply vanish. They don't disappear without a trace. They don't just stop existing. So what happened to them? Some believe they returned to normal life, faded back into society. But that doesn't fully explain the lack of records, because something this large should leave a mark. Others suggest something darker, that once their purpose was complete, they were no longer needed. And in a system built on control, being no longer needed could be dangerous. And this is where the theory becomes unsettling, because history is written by those in power. And sometimes what is not written is just as important as what is. Now, we reach the most controversial possibility. The idea that the workers were not just forgotten, but intentionally removed from history. And this changes everything, because erasing a group of people is not accidental. It is deliberate. It requires effort, control, authority. But why would anyone do that? To protect a secret? To control a narrative? To ensure that the focus remained on the pharaoh, not the people who built his legacy? And this is where the deeper question emerges. What else are we not being told? Because if the builders of the pyramids can disappear from history, then what else has been hidden? What other stories have been erased? The pyramids still stand, unchanged, unmoving, a symbol of power and mystery. But behind their stone walls, there is a silence where thousands of voices should be. Workers, builders, people who made it all possible, and yet they are gone, not just physically, but from the story itself. And the question is, did the workers who built the pyramid simply fade away, or were they erased so that only the kings would be remembered?